Welcome to Wellness Revolution, created and hosted by Tommy Lockwood, wellness entrepreneur and media professional. A show created for the purpose of achieving total wellness, spiritual, physical, and financial. Here is your host, Tommy Lockwood.
Welcome to Wellness Revolution. I'm your host, Tommy Lockwood, producer and wellness entrepreneur. And welcome to another segment, another episode, another step in this journey, because we are doing this together. We are coming to you live from Business to Miami. So I did get the okay from Sevan. He's on. That is Sevan Bomar, the special guest of today. Very, very thankful to have him here. And just want to get right into it. Sevan Bomar is widely known as a spiritual teacher committed to the universal transformation of humanity and involution for all beings. After writing and distributing freely his book titled The Code to the Matrix, he has been on a non-stop mission of developing step-by-step spiritual activation and interactive enlightenment via various innovative platforms such as the website Secret Energy. Starting in 2009 with the development of his first social network, he began instructing what is now thousands in an ever-growing community through online courses, video presentations, and radio shows. Assisting a wide gamut of seekers worldwide, Sevan began to develop and hone in on various advanced techniques that proved to be very effective in the spiritual, mental, and physical expansion of others. With thousands of active adherents globally, Sevan has now launched the University, which is a virtual institute that features a vast curriculum presented in stages with an aim to take the student from a neophyte to an adept. He currently resides in Costa Rica and is dedicated to the full-time development of Secret Energy. As a fusing of all of his knowledge and experience, Secret Energy is designed with a framework centered around the core principles of communication, connection, and open source spirituality. And I would like to invite Sevan Bomar on the show. Can you hear us, Sevan?
Wholeness, Tommy, can you hear me?
Oh, I can hear you perfectly. Maybe I'm going to raise up the volume for you. Thank you for coming on.
I got a little bit of reverb, but obviously if you don't hear it on your end, I don't think it's going to record that way.
We are doing new things here in the network, and it's a pleasure to be globally. You know, we're connecting across different countries, and that's a beautiful thing.
For sure. Well, we can just go ahead and dive right into this. I do want to first say, thanks so much for inviting me to the show. And it's amazing to be on WBRN and to be bringing this message, just about expansion and about how to get ourselves together, like asking, or not just asking, but answering the big questions about how we can get ourselves to another stage. And that's what we do. So I'm glad that you have me on. So it allows me to really be able to share that message with your audience.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I, from talking with you, connecting with you about what we were going to talk about today, I just had the idea of the cosmic sovereign, because many of my listeners know that I studied with Dr. Sevi, and he had this saying called the cosmic arrangement. And, sovereignty is something that we as individuals are seeking, and it's something, it's natural. We all want to have the things that we need to fulfill our deepest desires, and that's one of the reasons that I kind of connected those two things and said, hey, sovereignty and just being able to achieve that in multidimensional ways, that's what it's about.
Exactly. And the more ways that we can do that, the more ways that we can co-create with one another, then, that's what we're here to do. Well, and the main thing is, I like to just center the conversation, just in the sense to letting people realize that obviously there's something that we're really in need of these days, and that's just energy. Like when you really see the most powerful people in the world, you see them really power through, like they're just energetic mainframes and stuff. I don't know what you could call it. It's like the life of the party, but even deeper than that, it's like the person who actually has the energy that's driving the ideas and driving the abilities for others to actually begin to have vision and have sight. And so we call that, of course, mentors. So each person has mentors in different areas. Some people have spiritual mentors and food mentors or diet mentors, and this is really what we're dealing with in the world today, where we can take all the experiences that each person has, and then we can start to collaborate on more of a grand experience or a grand way to actually live life and live our existence. So that's a lot of what I want to talk about today, in conjunction with, what we've developed and how that's working for others, and also tips that people can start to follow in order to get themselves to where they want to be. So let's just face it, time is a major commodity. And when you're listening even to information, if you're serious about your life, then you know that, hey, I only have so much time that I can even listen to this. So I need to know if there's something going to be in this that I haven't heard before. Obviously, repetition does help us in many ways to just make sure that we're staying on track. But overall, people are looking for something new. It's like, okay, what differs from this than what I was doing before? So what I would like to do is I would like to address that question first, because I guess that will put people at ease with understanding if they're going to spend their time and listen to this conversation. So, the main thing, again, what differs from this versus what a person is already doing. And what I would say is that the reason why this is worth, spending the time to listen and see exactly what's going on is because really what we're looking to get to is actually sovereignty. And, sovereignty, like I talked to someone the other day and they were telling me, how everything is okay for them. And they really felt like they kind of hit like a spiritual wall. Like, okay, I'm eating what I'm supposed to be eating. I'm doing my meditation. I got my mind clear, and, I'm getting progress in that area. But I just see this like never-ending path that's in front of me that's basically saying that I'm maintaining things and I'm staying stable, but how am I going to grow? And I asked him the question. I said, so are you a millionaire yet? And then he said, no, of course not. I'm not a millionaire yet. And he laughed about it. He said, but I don't need to be. And I found that explanation a little bit interesting, because I can see on the surface how many people have been basically programmed to think that wealth is basically the dark side or the evil thing, and true for sure that because it's a level of power, that power can be abused, power can be used in a very dark way. But that doesn't say that says more about the individual using it and the system using it. It doesn't actually say anything about the object itself, which is in most cases innate. So what I was trying to get this guy to see very briefly, which he caught on to very quick, was actually he had given it a word like, hey, I don't need to be a millionaire, but really what he was saying is I don't need to be sovereign. And that's the truth. So when we think about sovereignty, then obviously that appeals to many people who are working with their consciousness and they're working to get, just free from anything that's binding them or holding them back. So they use that term where I can become a sovereign, I can activate, I become motivated, I save my energy, that kind of thing. But that also, because it's all involving energy or current, it also has to do with currency. So if a person has basically a small amount of currency, but still submerged into their ideas and dreams in the matrix and what they want to accomplish here, etc., then they're going to need to figure out how to pick up that current. They're going to need to figure out how to actually develop a very stable environment around them, and then be able to afford that environment, because even let's say organic foods are pretty expensive these days, but we're all encouraged to actually eat organic. The thing with water, trying to purify your water to the proper level is going to cost you a little bit. So bills need to be paid. There's costs associated with everything. And so this becomes really an uncomfortable conversation for many people that are so quote unquote conscious. And then this also becomes a very difficult conversation for a person who's just money motivated, because it actually works with finding the fine balance in between the two. And so that's what really differs in this, is it allows you to take knowledge spiritual knowledge, mental knowledge, physical knowledge, and then begin to apply it into the areas that you have in life that you may have been stumped before at trying to figure out how to solve that problem or getting through that barrier. And then this is going to teach you how to use another angle. So if you try to go at it mentally, then now you can actually go at it physically. You can start doing things with your body that allow you to overcome obstacles that are not even visible or not even solid. So this is about addressing all of the ways that we can not only utilize energy, but also manipulate energy with our own consciousness in order to break down the walls that are put up for us at every single moment in a reality with billions of people and a countless amount of spirits and souls and energies all moving around with the same agenda in many retrospects, which is survival. And in many tenses, some people are more aggressive at figuring out how they're going to survive than others. And so that also means that you get this top tier of individuals, if you may, or corporations and companies that make the decisions for the bulk of the masses. And it's because of that. So this is basically putting the person back into the driver's seat and letting them realize that, hey, I still need to be the person responsible for getting myself all the way to the beyond the top. There is no top, into the limitless state of consciousness, into my sovereignty. But on the same token, I'm going to have to navigate a realm that is full of sharks, full of vampires, full of, and these are terms that are even used in business, draconian, full of different kind of energies that are very hostile and very Smeagol-like and letting go of the reins to allow you to get to the next level. So this is about, well, how do you circumvent all of that?
Right.
And so, so that's really what I would like to just say to everyone, that, as we get further into this conversation, to realize that I use a mental and spiritual and physical dynamic of addressing issues in order to bring forth the solutions that I feel already exist.
Yes, and that's a very important point, especially with the analogy of the current and the currency as an energy. And I've started to to do more. They call it spiritual work, right? Not spiritual fun, as my good friend Omar Madzai says. And it meaning that as of lately, that's something that I've been learning. Like I explained to you in our earlier conversation, even being in a business network, for me, I studied religion in university, and not because of any guarantee of a job, but it was because I felt like everything that was around me really existed from a different dimension. And so it was really another perspective that I've had to find the balance now, because now I have to be out in the world. I have to be, I want to be out in the world, and I want to be sharing what I've learned. And that's important especially what you're doing is the same.
And, I like the way you put it too. I want to be, and that's a big part because, even the language gets a little tricky, because it's like you feel almost in the language pressure to actually do something, but the true state of consciousness or mode that you need to be in is where you want to do it, right? To see the biggest success. And, that's something that it's often not caught. It's just like a subconscious program that says, well, I have to do this. And my doctor used to always say, no, actually, it's what you get to do. So, there's this big part about this that you literally charge off of realizing that, if I listen to the negativity all day, if I submerge myself into that kind of field, then of course I'm gonna feel that way. Of course I'm gonna even begin to project that myself and spread that myself and say it. But if I start looking at how much has been given to me versus how much I don't like about it, and that's where tools and powers. Gratitude is a power. Thankfulness is a power, because in many cases, it's like a roller coaster at times, the emotions that we're put through. Because even when you get more wealthy, you're often approached with just not just being desensitized to the reality, because you start seeing repetitiveness, like the same people that call you because they're asking for money, they don't call you any other time. The same kind of business mindset that you have to put on like a mask in itself in order to get the kind of responses that you need from the people that are not quote unquote working on their consciousness. They're working on getting paid. And then also the lack of resources that are available for people who want to work with something that's karma free, meaning something that's not also somewhat counterproductive to the direction that they're looking to go in with their spiritual progress. So, if you have to, sell something all day that basically you don't agree with, or that you don't even like, or you don't even believe is helping people, or you don't believe in, then that's going to affect the person's energetic field. But then, okay, so if you don't want to do that, what else is available for you? And then that's where I challenge the entrepreneurs. I challenge the great thinkers to begin to make things available for those that are ready to bud more further into their consciousness for their creativity, because this actually does equal for all of us a much more splendid world. We would imagine that everything has already been invented, and anything that could really, really work for you that's really, really great has already been discovered. And that's partly true, because there's societies out there such as the Royal Institute, the Royal Societies, that have all that information, but that information is not privy to the populace. So when you start things like open source, let's say what open source did for business now, it starts these things that can't be stopped. So obviously open source allows other people that have technical skills and ability to contribute to whatever the project is without having to worry about infringing copyrights and those kind of things. So the big companies or whatever that will want to start that are not powerful enough to stop an idea like that or a movement like that. And that's why open source is here now. So when we look at just that example alone, it actually says to us that, yeah, you can get out there and create something that changes everything. In fact, they've come up with a word for it. It's actually called disruptive. Notice how
disruptor. They call it market disruptors.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But again, it sounds so. In a sense, it sounds so negative, because obviously nobody wants disruption, but it's actually disruption of the bigger companies. So this is also why I say that the negative in things is just really a perspective, because when you're looking at it from another end, then it actually can be switched to positive, and it even can be neutralized. So even things like a lot of people are very concerned about the political situation and scenario that we are supposedly in now, if you want to use the word we. But the scenario also, to me, just gives one more encouragement of why to actually get things together, and why to get yourself, now you're getting the full confirmation that, hey, it's pretty much foolishness going on in there. So if you don't take control of this right now, this is a good example of why you need to. So in that case, something negative, then quote unquote negative or dark or whatever a person wants to call it, evil, has become instrumental in pushing the person forward and beyond their normal stagnancy. So this, again, if we just looked at it as a mode of being, this means that this person is capable of turning negative into positive. And what I say is that if a person can do that, then they can become the most powerful being, because there's clearly a lot of negativity going on here on the realm, and it just needs those people that are going to come in and start, really, really nailing into how do we change that, and how do we create better applications.
Yeah, and one of the things that I like about even your statement about creating new applications is that in your previous shows you said a phrase that I really enjoy. It's called, if in the Bible it says there's nothing new under the sun, well, it's time to go beyond that, beyond the sun, and and I really like that, because we are living in infinite possibilities, especially if you acknowledge the growth and open source projects that have already shown how much we can collaborate together to make something, create something that that's even bigger than ourselves, so to speak. Something bigger that can be owned, can be named. Like the Western society runs a lot on patents and pretty much ownership, and in a sense, open source spirituality allows a different outlook on life, like what you brought in your platform, Secret Energy, which I love, by the way. It's really has so much for young people and on all walks of life, you see. But especially I know a lot of the younger people who are so smart, who utilizing technology and catching on to a lot of things that to us is like wow, and to the generation before me, they looked at me the same. So I see that we're going to see new things, new expansion, new inventions, and I truly feel that coming together as conscious people, if you want to call it that, as people aware of the situation, that we are powerful, sovereign beings ourselves, but together we can do amazing things.
Oh man, it's immense. I mean, it's actually the world that I'm gladly waiting on right now, and doing everything I can to propel into existence. And it's just because I would have a better time. Like, I'm not looking to run away from Earth either. And it's just like we were saying, I don't have to be here. I want to be here. So it's putting me in a position to, I'll watch as things transform, but more than anything, I'll be active in bringing about that transformation. And the big key to what you said is, if you acknowledge, and that's a big point, because it's very interesting, because when you start talking about a person's power, now I've been dealing with my own powers from a vivid experience, so I also can understand people who are just being told about something that they can't experience. It's gonna run dry after a while. But the truth is that even most religions are actually structured that way, and except for the deeper meditations and some of the more integrated traditions that really get you into deeper genuflection and working with your body in order to cause certain kinds of phenomena and certain awareness of greater awareness of consciousness, that's one thing. But the standard new traditions, the dogmatic traditions that people have adapted, actually don't reciprocate much of the spiritual energy that they're looking to receive, but they're living off of that, right? So the thing is that if we begin to acknowledge just from ourselves that we do have this immense level of power, and we begin to do that, like I always say that, make it a habit. If you got to even psych yourself out after a while, because it's for at least 22, 23 days, because now we've inherited a program of a negative state of consciousness, a counterproductive state of consciousness. Most people, we're not saying everyone, and we can always improve, even the best of us.
Right.
But the thing is that there is a tendency to go more in a recessive or regressive state when we get information, when we get news, even more than anything when we think about ourselves, because it's a highly judgmental reality. It's built on a lot of superficial things from the external level. So what that does is it drives a person constantly into being insecure about themselves. And then obviously the overarcher, the ones who run the reality, let's say, that make all the capital and want to keep the business within themselves. And these are just, you could even say it's a standard business tactic to always want your company to be the best company, the biggest company, and the leader of the pack, and that's capitalism, right? But the truth is that when that bleeds into the rest of the reality, it bleeds into this huge separation that literally says you need to get to this level in order for you to be recognized, in order for you to even be great, in order for you to even believe that you're anything close to a supreme being or God or anything like that. You need to go through all these levels. And so the reality is really good at placing all of these superficial levels, not just how people see you, but also college degrees and all these different authentications, awards and titles and all of this, in order to determine if the person has actually achieved something. But the situation still rings true, that even when they get that award or they get that recommendation or that commendation, they're looking to get another one then, and they still are insecure, because that insecurity comes from inside, and it actually has a lot to do with more what's on the spiritual scope than what's on the physical. And this spiritual scope, of course, is when a person feels like that there's something greater than them, and that they're just a small, being and a small piece of sand in the whole thing. So what I said is, when you're saying, yeah, you got to acknowledge it, to me, that's a big key, because once you acknowledge, okay, well, this is, I'm all powerful. Everything that I've been reading about is time for me to believe. And then every single day you're getting up with that. Remember, you're also deprogramming something. So there's going to be the third day or the fourth day you wake up and you're not going to feel that way, or you're going to encounter something in the reality and you're not going to feel that way. But you have to simulate it. This is how you break programming. You have to simulate, well, okay, well, I still feel great. I still feel on top. And then day 6, day 7, as it keeps rolling, all of a sudden because you're just basically reprogramming your consciousness, and you're more than capable of doing that. And you're reprogramming this consciousness to realize that it's what it's setting in front of itself as the ultimate goal is sovereignty. And I find that to be a perfect ultimate goal, because if you achieve it, and you can, then it literally means that you've also achieved that on the spiritual level, and it also will really put you in a space on the physical reality that will be pleasing for you. When you can supply your own power, your lights, when you can pull your own water from the spring or out of the ground or the well, when you bought your land, You begin to build with many of the futuristic technologies that are already available to us, futuristic materials and all these different things that are really at your disposal that you need no licensing to receive, but you need to acknowledge that this is something that you can enjoy. And then you also have to realize that we're in a society that has actually been sending out a program consistently, especially for what's supposed to be quote unquote minorities or whatever they want to give it as a term, that they can't actually achieve that, and that's not available for them in the millions of ways that that could come across. So this is just time now that people are starting to realize that the intelligence level is beginning to increase. We have things like, the Google alone there's enough knowledge and information within there. We have each other. We have people like you, people like me beginning to share messages of just what we're experiencing in our life, and that's synchronizing with others like, hey, man, I experienced that same thing, and here is also what I experienced. And to me, that nothing embodies just that whole idea of open source more than that. So look at the term. It's literally saying, some people look at the source as God, by the way. Like when you say, well, what's the source of all things? People say, well, the source of all things is obviously God. But obviously, those are terms. But truthfully, if something says open source, what it's saying is that the route to the source to everything as far as power, energy, whatever you're talking about is open. It's no longer closed. So this means that we are coming out of a closed source reality where that energy has tried to be manipulated. And then now, that's breaking free. So it's a different time than other times. And this is why sometimes you have to rouse yourself again, because, I know people that are a bit older than I am, and they've went through this whole process 15 years ago, 20 years ago, thinking that the world was going to go into this grand phase, just all of the things that, we were even sold a bit of it before 2012. Of course. And then they experienced a scenario where it didn't happen. Like if we think about the 60s and the 70s and, what was going on with consciousness then, Mount Shasta and just all the ideas, it was the same type of spiritual explosion that we're actually dealing with in our time now, if not maybe a little bit stronger. But the ultimate outcome of that still left the world in need of preparation. Because when we look at things, and we can switch a little bit more into business here in a moment, but when we just look at things like Occupy Wall Street, it's proof that you can get people together. You can get hundreds of thousands of people together, even millions of people together around the world. But if there's no plan, then it eventually just fizzes out and people don't even remember what happened anymore. Of course. And so it tells those who are actually looking to make major changes, hey, start thinking about some of the things that actually happened and seeing what the outcome was, and then start realizing what it took it to the next level, create that, and then go ahead and kick it off again. And then you've already begun to fix what was the problem and something that could have been very, very influential for the world.
Yeah, and I actually want to talk about your response, into this, to bring about these changes, of course, about the Spirit Tech program. But before I get into that, I actually wanted to ask you a very important question in terms of these energies that are occurring, because if we look into the monetary system, we know that it has some debt acquired to it already in its creation, and so there's money being spent, energy being spent for this or that, and so you did say something about gratitude being like a magnet and other things. I would like to ask you, what are the things that you can share with us about, every day? Like, I don't want to get corny here, but affirmations, they are effective in a sense. But beyond language, what are the things that you would recommend?
I mean, when we go beyond the scope of language, which is where things truly begin, that's directly in the application, because let's just face it, the two sides to this is the thinking side of it, and the data and the numbers and the words and the letters and all the different variations, the division. And then the other side is all knowing, where there's no classifications, there's no divisions, there's none of that. And that's the beauty of this entire thing, because in that, it's so fulfilling, those existences. And we have access to both of those spaces. So for me, every day is working to merge those two worlds and clearly one is more superior than the other, and that's just how it works. So meaning that the all-knowing is much more superior than the thinking realm and still trying to answer questions and all that. So what I work to do personally is I work to stay in that what some would call the Zen or the meditation state of consciousness, while I'm still actually carrying out in my daily thing that's going on in the reality. Now, this of course is very tricky because you're literally attempting to talk and listen at the same time, or attempting to read and walk at the same time. It's like you're forcing your brain to do something that what it normally does separately but together. And that's the entire riddle to our existence. Actually, it's to merge night and day, to bring the polarities together, right? Every single tradition kind of encases something like that within its dogma, if it's survived till today. And so the main thing, again, that I do is I just work to bring those balances together when we're talking about what goes on beyond conversation and words. And then when we come back into the physical reality, or when I come back into the physical reality and I get into action, I work the most to allow everything that I'm doing to reflect my state within that I've achieved. And I've noticed that, of course, that it's we should think of at times that sometimes we have a lot of verbal expressions of that. We have even books that express that. But more than anything, we should think about our inventive capability and our ability to actually fabricate and create things that also become expressions of us. So,
right.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those parts of life that it requires us to really look deep in ourselves and start spending time with ourselves. And there's a person's work that I would really like to recommend, just for people who are looking to understand a lot about the riddle within themselves, the collective riddle within maybe their racial group, and then the much more larger riddle with their nation, and then the bigger riddle with the world, et cetera,
Right.
and how to really solve those riddles. You should probably look into Sergio Magana, who's that's Magana, and he's a gentleman that really gets into understanding what the Toltecs, which is obviously an ancient tradition, even coming through many of the ancient areas like Angkor Wat, Kemet, Samaria, and these areas in the earlier days. Many of these tribes are actually practicing more of getting in control of their dream world and actually controlling this physical reality that we're living in now, which is really kind of lagged out. It's a little bit slow on the whole time scale of our existence. They would work with that reality to begin to change things in this reality. And the interesting thing, the reason why I was drawn to the work personally is because I can do different things, and it would be up to the person to believe that I can do those things, though. Like if I explain some of the abilities that I've gained from going into meditations for months and months on end, then if I tell that to a person, they could be fascinated by what I'm telling them, but at the end of the day, they're still going to wonder how they can accomplish that themselves. And so really Secret Energy and all the platforms that we built are centered around that, like how to get yourself together so that you can go into a true activation process vividly. But even more so than that, now, we're just looking at a time where you can start beginning to control, well, excuse me, I guess I kind of lost my train of thought. But basically what I was saying is that the reason why I was drawn closely to his work is that dreaming is something that everyone can do. Meaning that if I have some power and ability that I've honed in over the last 4 or 5 years, then that's me. But the truth is that I've never met one person that didn't at least have one dream. And so it really harkens to that there's ability that we all have, that we can all start to graduate, and that will reap great results because it just has so much potential. It's just being downplayed. It's like what's right in front of us because there's no other space that literally, if you know how to control it, which of course is what they call lucid dreaming, you can experience anything you want. You can even be untethered, meaning you can fly. And you can learn there, and many people just know their dreams for at least vivid things, like when you experience something there, you can wake up crying, you could even get high on some drug there and be all high in the dream. So this is something that would literally, if we weren't looking at it and trying to figure out what it was, it would be extremely ignorant on our behalf because it's really magical and it's one of the things that we all can do. So, of course, I've given it I've built it up, but just think about it. Your dreams, you can do it. What if you could get control? That's a known thing that you can do. It's called lucid dreaming. But even deeper than that new age version of lucid dreaming, you could check out gentlemen like mainly Sergio Magana about what are the techniques that the ancient people used to get in control of their dream. And the reason for this would be is if you can't control your dream, and this is just what's stated, and I do believe it's true 100%, especially from my times of controlling dreams and meditations, etc. But if you can't control your dream, then you actually can't control what happens after you die, because that is the same process. When you do lose consciousness of this body, as they call it, or it goes into autopilot and then you slip into that other space, that you have really limitless potential. That is actually what happens when you leave Earth. So if you can train yourself here to actually know how to go through that process and know what to do after that, then you unlock this entire reality for yourself. So anyone that feels like, okay, well, I don't have the money. Like sometimes it's like, I don't have the money to do what he's talking about and to cleanse my body and all those kind of things. Or, you know, I don't have the kind of space and I'm not in that country. So any of those walls that are normally built up that a person can adapt and say, this is why I can't do what he's talking about doing, all of it's eliminated because you can dream. And this guy gives the step-by-step procedures of how to get in control of that space. So that's what I've been working on in real time now.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. That is truly beautiful. The most we can do is, the best thing we can do is just get to know self, right? All is self,
right.
as you state in your videos and presentations, and it is a beautiful thing to realize, because one of the things that I caught from your other statements earlier in the conversation is the self-love. You know, that's a big hindrance, even with being able to receive money, right? Or being able to receive anything for that matter,
right.
To be able to be worthy of love, and that's a big thing that has liberated me in thinking, especially about my relationships and things like that. And I still find myself doing work related to healing, you know, the past, and it's definitely helped me just as much as cleansing, just as much as doing meditations, and obviously doing the herbs, drinking the herbs and the right water. All those things help with getting clear within, so that way everything else without becomes easier to manage, so to speak. And that's, I think, the point that you're making with lucid dreaming. I do want to make the listeners aware, in my earlier shows, I do talk about my experience fasting and how it totally heightened my dream state, and being able to fly and being able to control it is quite fascinating, and something that I learned through cleaning the body. Really, it's nothing that I learned in any other way, and that's why I strongly join your movement when it's saying that, you know, if you're receiving the filters, if you're receiving information through dirty filters, the information is in a sense distorted. Right. So I saw the freedom, felt the freedom experience again. Direct experience, you know, beats anything really. But experiencing cleansing and being able to go into other areas of existence has been truly amazing.
Yeah, you know, and I'd like for people to look at it also as dropping the weight, and literally, not just, you know, like literally getting thinner, but actually dropping the weight of many of the burdens that are on us in reality, and we don't even know are there. You know, I think sometimes you can explain the same thing to someone a different way, and then they kind of get it. Because, you know, generally when you talk to people about fasting, and then they, first of all, if they've ever fasted before, it's immediately like already their worms and all sorts of things inside their consciousness are like, no, because they pick up on those signals. They are intelligent too. So they're like, okay, no, that means that we're going to go through this process that's going to be uncomfortable for us, and I'm not going through that process. But if you actually verbalize it to a person that, look, there is a way to start to guarantee that many of the endeavors that you're setting out on are actually going to happen. If you're at a clutch point and you need something to happen for you, then you got to drop some of the weight. And just like you said, meaning, you know, slow down the eating process, because the less that the organs have to process from a food level, the more they can power that energy into your manifestation, which is coming from your brain, frontal lobe, etc. So this is for many people, they need to understand that this is not just spiritual or even metaphysical. This is scientific. This is, you know, you can read these frequencies coming off of someone. And that person even has the ability to amplify those frequencies, not just by you know, just thought like, okay, I'm gonna really believe in this. But if you clean out your body, it actually gives you a higher conductivity, and this pushes more of your energy into that manifestation. And of course, when we give those kind of processes titles like magic, then a person starts, you know, it builds all this mysticism, literally around it, and it becomes very obscure for people. And the other thing is to realize, you know, mainly the self-love thing is big because we have to face it, and as positive and optimistic as we can be. Even with African Americans, for instance, they did come out of a situation of slavery, but even Native Americans, actually, which their situation is a bit more recent, we're actually, the United States is still a country that is comprised of being on top of someone's land that doesn't actually belong to them. And now everyone has forgotten that. So, or a lot of people have forgotten that. So I would say just examine how we can be made to forget things that haven't happened that long ago, and then immediately start going into another state of mind, like, oh, well, it's all friendly and it's all love, right? And the reason why it's important to come into that assumption is also because then you start realizing the program that's being sent out is basically saying, I call it scraps from the master's table. What it basically means is that you're supposed to believe that even what they're offering as the greatest thing that you can achieve is the best thing that you can ever have, rather than what it truly is. Because what it truly is just scraps. The best thing, even if you got $1 billion, it's still scraps compared to who you truly are and what you're capable of doing and what you can truly have, which is actually limitless. So that means that anything that would be given in lieu of your power and your prestige would always fall short. So the thing is to remember that broadcasts over the reality, like the movie They Live, to everyone, just, hey, you're nothing. Hey, you got to get to this level. And then maybe you buy that new car and you start wearing that brand of clothing. So this keeps broadcasting over the matrix, but still even getting all of that, just scraps. And then when a person starts saying, okay, even the best that they could give me would be just scraps, I'm looking for something greater. What they're actually doing is they're setting this bar subconsciously within themselves, a real challenge for them who they truly are. And then they start to be able to pull in the energy that's associated with accomplishing great things. Versus if I'm just looking to, and I just had an analogy for that a while ago, but if I'm looking to be a bagger at a convenience store, well, that's not going to be hard because they flip baggers over all the time. It's like one of those jobs that have, the highest turnover rate.
Right.
But if you want to go and do something like become, let's say, the president or a physicist or whatever, of course, it's going to take a lot more energy and take a lot more intentions. So the energy that is accumulated within the body and stored within the other parts of the consciousness, such as what we would call the aura, what we would call the chakras, that energy is actually highly useful for pushing into our projections. And this, of course, leads to, okay, well, what are you projecting, though? Because if you're sending mixed signals out there, if you haven't actually found your harmonic point, if you're always in duality, oh, I don't like this person, I don't like that person, you're more than capable of analyzing what's going on here and calculating experiences without throwing yourself emotionally into those things. And so these are just little tweaks, again, that a person can begin to make to themselves, because it doesn't mean, again, stick your head in the sand and don't believe that anything is going on wrong that's negative. That's not what I said, because you as a being, you should be able to watch everything and be able to understand. You work to understand more and more about why certain things are taking place. But you need to be able to see it first and withstand it. This is about, once you have come to the realization of that experience, realizing that, hey, you don't perceive black unless you perceive white. You don't perceive night unless you perceive day. Every single thing here is only perceived through contrast. And when you see something, because this is your own personal preference, but when you see something that you don't like or you want to stop, or you don't want it in your reality anymore, truly the only space that you can rid of that completely is your own world. And this kind of gets you into understanding, or understanding as we call it, what is the true goal of this life. The true goal of this life is to, like a buffet, begin to understand the energies, so that way you could start to pick out, what do you want to live your existence like? So that's actually, the life is a question, and that's why life is a riddle. It's actually asking us, not that we figure it out, but that we figure out what we want out of it, and then what we don't want. And then our existence here is to start the preparatory phase, which is what the ancestors were doing. Start this preparatory phase of creating an entire world that belongs to them. On this level, it's called our body. And then filling that world with what we want to experience, based on, we at least came to a place that was like a storehouse of all the energy, so we can figure out what we want it to gravitate to. Now, the reason why I say it that way is because many people are under this impression that everyone wants to live the same kind of reality that they want to live, that everyone wants to live a quote unquote good life. And
yeah.
that term good is in the definition, it's to the definition of the person that you're actually speaking with based on their experience and their incarnation. So this means that the only person that you're really in charge of is you, and that realizing what you like and what you don't like in this reality, and figuring out how to balance those energies, and then crystallizing it, okay, and saying what is going to be my next existence, what is that going to be like, and then realizing also that you can go ahead and begin to create that, and then starting to manifest that. So that's tapping into, and everyone has it, man and woman alike, tapping into your process of developing in your own womb this birth that comes out in your next existence of the world that you actually want to exist in. So that's what I mean by other stuff. Then that means like Toyotas or Lexuses or great jobs. All that just pales in the sight of what I just talked about. So that's what I mean by those are scraps from the master's table. The best they can do still wouldn't allow you to have your own entire world and to be able to create at will. So this is what we're talking about here, and it's important to always keep our consciousness in that space, because it'll always remain propelled. We will be our own brilliance. We will power ourselves, and then that's how you also become motivation for yourself, because a big part of this, again, we're just cramming it all into this one session, a big part of this is staying motivated. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how well thought through your plan is, and all the different things that you may have done to yourself and your body. If you don't also know how to motivate yourself, that stuff can be kind of even counterproductive. Like my doctor used to say, you don't want to get crazy about this. Meaning, now you only can eat these certain things, and now you only can do these certain things, and you go out with your friends, you're like an alien to them now, and it's just like you've alienated yourself from the reality. It's about finding that harmonic balance. Doing the terrain modification, which is giving yourself the process and the period to start digesting this kind of talk, this kind of information, this kind of transformation, and then starting to pinpoint, okay, so what can I really start hitting first? And like if someone asked me that, I'd say, hey, definitely the body. Like if you want to try to go at the mind with a dirty body, like you said earlier, it's like going through dirty filters. You'll never win. The spirit is like just being hindered by the whole thing. So it still leads back to the body. So then you can start realizing, okay, well, this food that I'm putting in my mouth, and I always look at food like this, how much energy is in this? And just, if we have this intuitive knowledge, right? And that's what the Zen zone or all-knowing is. Intuitive knowledge allows you to look at something and know, hey, ain't no energy in there. And energy sometimes is not just that, hey, it's all green, like it's all salad or whatever. It also even is who prepared it. Like our ancestors and even the recent our recent, the elders, all these people were capable of, when they're creating something, even if it's just some tortillas, the amount of, the touching of the hands and the amount of love and the rock and all that left that tortilla more powerful than a salad that's pushed out as something like a Dairy Queen. So these are the things that now we have to start thinking about, because we're in the cycle that, and this is what the Toltecs and the Mayans, et cetera, are talking about, is what happened in 2012 was basically the end of what they call the fifth sun. And the fifth sun is known as the sun of light, meaning that it's all about everything outside. It illuminates. So what I mean by that is that then you get external gods as a way to satiate your spiritual questions and queries and connection. You get external medicine as a way to actually heal things that would be still too deep for external medicine to heal. So we go into this whole phase of when the sons of light, or when we're in the sun of light phase, we go through these whole phases of everything being external. But when you start thinking about this next phase, which they call the son of darkness, and even when people hear that, they tremble. And that's why there was a lot written in there like, oh, there's going to be earthquakes and all this kind of stuff. Now, personally, on Earth, we didn't experience any of those physical earthquakes that many of the New Age people had interpreted to begin to occur in 2012. But what we did experience, which is really what the scripture says, especially for the person who's looking at it on the deep level that it needs to be interpreted, it said that there would be a shakeup in basically the way you think of the reality. Like everything that you feel like is external, you'll feel like you need to go more internal. And that whole structure will start to collapse. And so this again brings a person into this phase to where they start to discover what's in the darkness. And the interesting part is it's them. It's us. Like, because we've been spending so much time trying to figure out external integers, how much math and geometry and languages and all of those kind of things, we've left this other side of us virtually undiscovered. And that's actually what's known as the darkness. It means what's not known. So we now have this opportunity to turn our inner sun into the darkness of ourselves, to begin to shine a light on who we are. Like, okay, now I'm going to explain to you what all this super advanced, I can't even use the word technology, I would say super advanced as technology is for. Because when we again look at the body and we look at an iPhone, or we even look at a quantum computer, those systems which are supposed to be the most advanced, they pale to how the body got designed. So to me, again, that and to any person who's reading very closely and interpreting what's going on through Gnosticism, it's basically showing that the most unknown thing is us. And the stage that we're going into now is the realization of us. And that's what takes us out of what we would think would be like a dark age into this age of light, because we're no longer studying things going on outside of us. We're discovering things that are going on within to make changes within everything. So
wow, thank you so much for that, Sevan. It's truly been amazing to have you here. To the listeners, this is Wellness Revolution, and you can find us on Facebook at Wellness Revolution Live, Instagram Wellness Revolution _live, and YouTube by the name Wellness Revolution. Take care and wholeness.
Thank you for listening to Wellness Revolution with your host, Tommy Lockwood, wellness entrepreneur and media professional. Make sure to listen every Saturday from 11 a.m. to noon Eastern Standard Time on WBRNmiami.com.